This video is about negotiating a lower appraisal where a seller assist is involved. A seller assist is a financial tool in order for the borrower to finance their closing costs over the life of the loan. Now, because there was a seller assist involved in this deal, that caused upward pressure on the appraisal. So for example, let's say the agreed price was $250 and there was a $10,000 seller assist. That was a net price of $240. Maybe the property would have easily, appraised for $240. The borrower couldn't buy the property at $240 because they didn't have the money to pay for their closing costs. So they had to make it $250 to get the $10,000 towards their closing costs. So now let's say, because since appraisers always try to shoot for the sales price as the appraised value, they shot for $250 and they just couldn't get the price there. So they got the price at $245. So one of four things can happen. The best thing for the buyer would be for the seller to lower the sales price to $245 and keep the full $10,000 seller assist. So in essence, the seller will net $235 rather than $230, rather than $240, which was the original net. Now keep in mind, when the price goes down by $10,000, the closing costs of the seller also go down. So for example, if let's say the commission were 6% and the transfer tax was just a flat 2%, that would be $800. So the seller isn't netting $10,000 less, they're actually netting $9,200 less. So make sure you point that out when you're working with the seller on the seller side. So best for the buyer is lower the price to $245, keep the assist intact. The best for the seller would be to obviously lower the price to $245 and lower the seller assist by $5,000 so that it would only be $5,000. That way they can maintain the net of $240 and the borrower would have to come up with another $5,000 to cover their own closing costs. If you're on the listing side, I would always, seek to find out if the buyer can go find money elsewhere. A lot of times they might have family that will help them out, or maybe they can come up with more money. It cannot hurt to ask. The last resort would be to actually terminate the deal based on the seller not being willing to budge and the buyer not being willing to bring more money. And then, of course, what happens in most cases is there's some sort of compromise where, let's say, the price is lower to $245, which is always the case when the appraisal is lower. It has to go down to $245. And let's say the assist is lowered to $7,500. So the borrower has to come up with another $2,500 to pay for their own closing costs, and the seller is netting $2,500 less than before. So your four scenarios are: number one, keep the $245 sales price. A, best for the buyer is to keep the $10,000 seller assist. B, best for the seller, lower the seller assist to $5,000 and the borrower comes up with another $5,000 in closing costs to pay on their own behalf. Or three, the compromise is the seller assist is lowered to $7,500, the borrower has to come up with another $2,500 and the seller nets about $2,500 less. And of course, the fourth option, the last resort, is to terminate the deal. So there you have it. That's how you negotiate a lower appraisal when there's a seller assist involved.